Hey guys, the other day you saw me cut this out and finish the design on the plasma table. I've tacked it up in the meantime. Went and got some high heat paint. So I think we'll go ahead and we're going to try to clean this up a little bit. If you guys cut anything out with a torch or with a CNC plasma cutter, there tends to be a little bit of leftover stuff on the backside. For a plasma torch, we call that dross. Now, it's not necessarily a big deal. We have a little bit here. I should have probably slowed the table speed down a little bit. Next time we will, and that should eliminate some of that dross. There's not very much at all. I'm not even going to worry about it on the inside. And on the outside, it looks really nice. So I'm just going to go ahead, clean this up a little bit before we go ahead and spray it. Using a flap disc. Don't use a grinding wheel. Definitely don't use a cutoff wheel. The really thin wheels are the cutoff wheels. The ones about a 1/4 inch thick are grinding wheels. It's too aggressive. It'll scratch the base metal. A flap disc tends to work pretty well and it won't scratch the base metal. So let's give it a whirl. So it tends just to be around the edges, and it smooths out really, really well. Now I'll use a flap disc on all the edges, and then I go through and I'll use a regular, like a DA sander with a high grit on most everything else to get some of that surface, just dirt and grit and grime off. We don't need to go over the whole thing with a flap disc. But if you take a look at that, it just kind of polishes it around the edges a little bit. Don't go too much, don't get too aggressive. But we'll go ahead, we'll do all the sides quick, and grab the DA sander. The other thing, when you're grinding, or in this case using a flap disc on anything that you're going to paint, you want to keep it moving. Don't let it sit in one spot. Don't let it get heated up. You don't want to make gouges or scratches because that'll telegraph right through the paint. So just keep it moving pretty fast. Try to keep a good smooth surface. All right, kind of make sure there's no really sharp edges. Sharp edges aren't good for paint. It doesn't like to stick to it. So I'm just going to hit these corners a little bit. So we'll grab the sander. All right, so I know I said DA earlier, but I grabbed the random orbital, and I think that'll work just fine for us. We're using, that's about 150 grit in there. You could go finer, 220 probably would be great, but this is what we had, so we'll polish it up a little bit. All right. This actually feels pretty smooth. All right, so I'll take you guys in a little bit, show you a close-up of what we have, so you kind of get an idea of what it should look like. Get a good before and after when we paint it. All right. All right, so this is kind of what it looks like. This is just some discoloration in the steel up here. It's actually very, very smooth. So you can kind of see how we hit around all the edges a little bit. And I didn't intentionally grind it over. It just kind of puckered up a little bit with the CNC table, and now it flattened it right out. And we tried to get anything else that was rough and smooth it right out. So all the discolorations you're seeing right now will go away 100%. And it should look pretty smooth and nice when we're finished. All right, I'll show you guys it when we're painting it here. All right, so I always like to start from worst side and work to best side. So in this case, we're gonna start on the bottom and the feet, because I don't really care what it looks like, it's just to provide a little protection. So sometimes when these have sat for a while, when it's really cold, you don't even hear that marble shaking around in there for a little bit, but it's not going too poorly right now. All right, now you always want to work in a well-ventilated area for this stuff. We have some bay doors I have open, so it should be pretty good. Now this is a matte finish, so it shouldn't be too horribly shiny. All right, so we'll do the inside, the outside, and then we're gonna finish up with the top ring here. Got to be careful tipping some of these cans too much. This isn't a spray in any position can, so if you tip it right over, the paint won't come out and it'll start to spray the accelerant out and clean up the tip. Which is what you do to clean it out when you're done. You'll tip it upside down and spray it. Now with some of this paint, if you're putting on multiple coats, which you should, while you're waiting for it to dry, it's pretty easy, and I'll show you on the outside if I can, it's pretty easy to get fooled into thinking, hey, I missed a spot, because when it starts to dry, especially with matte finishes, it'll look like you missed a spot. If it's, you know, because there's a black, there's a dark color. So you'll see what I mean. It dries inconsistently. All right, so we'll go ahead and spray the outside now. If I can, I start off the object and finish off the object. First coat I'll go one direction, second coat I go the other direction. These little rattle cans don't really shoot out a good fan pattern. They'll shoot out kind of a round dot as opposed to a football shape if you've used a spray gun before. Don't want to go too much. A lot of people put on way too much and it ends up dripping or running. All right, so you may see this. I'll face that towards you, and you may see it as it dries. It'll kind of look different colors. So like I said, this is a matte black, so just to kind of protect it when it's sitting outside. Now the reason why we spray the worst surface first and the best surface last is because if there's any overspray, it falls onto the worst surface, and the area you finish last should be the one most people look at, because that shouldn't have much overspray on it. Okay, so you can kind of see, I'm not sure if you guys can see it in the light, but there's some areas that look a little different than others, and that's just because of the way the paint's dry. So what I'm doing when I'm painting here, I'm trying not to pivot my wrist, keeping it the same distance off as you go across, and trying to overlap by, I don't know, about a third to the previous coat. All right. I think this top edge is probably the one most people will see. So that's the one we're trying to finish out with. Now on a flat surface, you can get away with putting a little bit extra paint on there, but you don't want too much. Don't want it dripping. All right. There you go. We will let this dry, put a couple more coats on it, and then go have a fire.